Now, for 2,500 years, we've had Zen Buddhism, right? Or any form of Buddhism for that matter. And the biggest challenge with things like Buddhism that produce actual enlightenment, people that are completely free from suffering, people that have total consciousness where their decision making is made on a conscious level, not from reactionary paradigms. Somebody absent the experience of feeling not good enough or broken. And essentially totally healed from a psychological standpoint, regardless of whatever they experience in their life. Now, you see, the problem is that that is something that has no relatability. And so, while this is a true thing, it's not something that would be true from the context of psychology, because it's impossible. It would be the same thing as me trying to describe something as red to somebody that's colorblind, right? There would be no way for me to describe a rainbow to somebody that's colorblind. Or if I gave you the ingredients and recipe for apple pie, you printing that out and eating the recipe would be the equivalent. You know, if you haven't experienced apple pie, then me telling you I had apple pie today would not really be something you could relate to. And even if I explain the apple pie to you, it would not create the experience of apple pie in your imagination. And so when you think about things that are foundational to the human experience, like sensations, like let's just say flavors, like sweetness or saltiness or heat or cold or sad or happy, these experiential phenomena don't have really any surrogates. You know, like you can't really describe sweet without just saying sweet, because you've experienced sweet and I've experienced sweet. When I say sweet, then you know what it is that I'm describing. Or if I say sad, then you know. But if you couldn't taste sweetness, if you didn't have the taste bud, if you put sugar in your mouth and it just had a texture only, then there would be no way for me to have you understand something that was sweet. You could watch me smile and know that I like it, but that would be all that you would be able to do. It wouldn't matter how I described it. You know, I could try to compare it to some other sensation, but it would never approximate it, right? And so, when it comes to things like transformation, enlightenment, those have been relegated to mystical experiences that I could take a theology class, and I did. And the teacher has a PhD, and his favorite subject was Buddhism. And so, you know, I could take a test and I could nail down all the different terminologies. And if I asked him to explain enlightenment to me, he could give me a definition for it. He could speculate about what that might be like for someone. But without himself having experienced it, he could be an expert at Buddhism. He could teach the history of it, its cultural implications, its relevance. But all the knowledge that he has no power to induce the experience of Buddhism. And so things that are experiential, absent the experience, can become philosophies, concepts, dogmas. And so while we've had people for thousands of years and cultures of people that had wisdom, you know, we have a world of psychology that has not yet enveloped the extraordinary opportunity that's present in recognizing that enlightenment is something possible for people. And that in not acknowledging this, psychology has not even approximated the power available in ontological practices and exercises that absolutely transform the human experience and disappear constraints and boundaries that cause profound state changes and emotional outcomes and patterns of behavior. Then those patterns of behavior get cataloged and get transformed into diagnoses and mental health conditions that cause profound stigmatization of human beings. And that we have this culture where we believe trauma to be at the cause and source of suffering in later life. And these thoughts about healing and understanding. And the irony is that the practices of ontology or Buddhism absolutely segregate somebody from any need to understand because they happen on a different level, a domain of experiencing life. And the rumination and discussions and analyzing that is traditionally found in talk therapy have profound limitations, where ontology absolutely removes the dynamic that causes the experience itself, where psychology looks at the experience, the outcome, the feelings as the issue. In trying to address feelings, we perpetuate a sense of permanence and futility. And so, ontology is the study of being. It is underneath psychology. And I would say the study of being is like the DNA of the human experience, where we see the experience of a person as reflected from an external experience. You have a person that is being the way they think they need to be, given the way that they see and experience things. And so psychology looks at the external experience and says, oh my gosh, this is why you feel abandoned. Now we need to look at your past and see if there's a similar experience that we need to work through and process the trauma of that experience. And ontology says, well, that event has nothing to do with your experience. You got triggered by that event, but that event is arbitrary. And if we delete the trigger, then every single experience in the history of your life that was similar in nature is something you can revisit in your mind and never even experience any stress or reaction to that. And in addressing the trigger, it goes away permanently. And so we don't need to deal with the feelings. The feelings have no significance other than they're recreated by a trigger. And so ontology took psychology and used it to examine things like Buddhism in an effort to try to understand underlying dynamics that cause the subjective experience of a person, so that we would have the power to transform that experience. And so I could go to a class like the Landmark Forum and see people that have been in therapy, people that have been on medications, and 150 people transform in a 3-day class. And the entire psychology of the person is permanently altered. And a breakthrough in self-awareness that is absolutely unattainable in any conventional psychological practice ensues. And these experiences are so radical that it is outside the lens of psychology so dramatically that psychology could not even validate these experiences. And it even creates a problem where companies and organizations like Landmark Worldwide have people show up at the conclusion of an event like the Landmark Forum, where 150 people have literally transformed and are in this amazing space of peace and possibility. And people showing up in a normal state might even find it weird that there's all these happy, peaceful people, and it becomes a boundary for even the acknowledgement of this experience as being real. There's people that think it's a cult, and suddenly people that did a class over 3 days are considered cult members. And so while we've had these extraordinary transformational things that have the utmost potential to alter humankind, they've existed outside the boundaries of psychology for too long.